This week we lost two giants of the Labour family, and I thank the Prime Minister for his comments. Alistair Darling was a man of unassuming intelligence, warmth and kindness. He brought a calm expertise and, in private, a cutting wit, and devoted his love of his family was ever present. Our thoughts are with Maggie, his wife, Callum, Anna, who he loved so dearly. Glenys Kinnock was a passionate campaigner for social justice who changed lives home and abroad. She was a loving and supportive partner and mother, and her death is a huge loss to all of us. We are thinking of Neil, of Stephen, Rachel, and of all the family. Can I also echo the Prime Minister's comments in relation to Lord Douglas Hamilton? And in relation to the Hillsborough families, they deserve justice. In a previous capacity, I worked with the families. They waited a very, very long time for the findings, thanks to people in this House, and they've waited a long time for this response, but I'm glad it is now coming. Madam Deputy Speaker, if the purpose of the Rwanda gimmick was to solve a political headache of the Tories' own making, to get people out of the country who they simply couldn't deal with, then it's been a resounding success. After all, they've managed to send 3 Home Secretaries there, an achievement for which the whole country can be grateful. So, apart from members of his own cabinet, how many people has the Prime Minister sent to Rwanda?
Well, Madam Deputy Speaker, as I've been clear before, we will do everything it takes. Mr. Speaker, we will do everything it takes to get this scheme working so that we can indeed stop the boats. And that's why this week we have signed a new legally binding treaty with Rwanda, which together with new legislation will address all the concerns that have been raised, because everyone should be in no doubt about our absolute commitment to stop the boats and get flights off. Because, Madam Deputy Speaker, and this is the crucial point that the Honourable Gentleman doesn't understand, deterrence is critical. Even the National Crime Agency have said that you need an effective removals and deterrence agreement if you truly want to break the cycle of tragedy that we see. But what we heard this morning from his own ministers was that they would scrap the scheme even when it is operational and working. As again, once again, Mr. Speaker, once again, instead of being on the side of the British people, he finds himself on the side of the people smugglers.
Madam Deputy Speaker, when they first announced this gimmick, they claimed Rwanda would settle tens of thousands of people. Then the Deputy former Prime Minister quickly whittled it down to mere hundreds. Then the Court of Appeal in June made clear there's housing for just 100. The current number of people sent there remains stubbornly consistent, 0. At the same time, Madam Deputy, Article 19 of the treaty says the parties shall make arrangements for the United Kingdom to resettle a portion of Rwanda's most vulnerable refugees in the United Kingdom. So how many refugees from Rwanda will be coming here to the UK under the treaty?
Mr. Speaker, Madam Deputy Speaker, sorry.
Order! Prime Minister.
It addresses all the concerns of the Supreme Court. But it's a point of pride, Madam Deputy Speaker, that we are a compassionate country that does welcome people from around the world. But let me just get the Honourable Gentleman up to speed on what we are doing. Reduce the number of illegal arrivals from Albania by 90%. Increase the number of illegal working raids by 50%. Because of all the action, we've taken the number of small boat arrivals down by 1/3, Madam Deputy Speaker. But what is the Honourable Gentleman's plan? Because it comes down to he just simply doesn't have a plan to address this problem. But no, I'm probably being unfair because he does have a plan. It's to cook up a deal with the EU that would see us accept 100,000 illegal migrants.
Sir Keir Starmer.
Migration's trebled on his watch, and all he can do is make up numbers about the Labour Party. It's really pitiful. I'm not actually sure the Prime Minister can have read this thing. Article 4 says the scheme is capped at Rwanda's capacity. That's 100. Article 5 says Rwanda can turn them away if they want. Article 19 says we actually have to take refugees from Rwanda. How much did this fantastic deal cost us?
Prime Minister.
Madam Deputy Speaker, as the Home Secretary was crystal clear about, there is no incremental money. There is no incremental money that has been provided. This about is ensuring that the concerns of the Supreme Court have all been addressed in a legally binding treaty that will allow us to operationalise the scheme. But I'm glad he raised the topic of legal migration, which I agree is absolutely far too high, Madam Deputy Speaker. That's why this week we've outlined a plan bigger than any other government before to reduce the levels of legal migration by £300. It's an incredibly comprehensive plan. So if he cares so much about it, the simple question for him is, does he support the plan?
Madam Deputy Speaker, he clearly hasn't really. Annex A says on top of the 140 million he's already showered on Rwanda, when we send people there under this treaty, we have to pay for their accommodation and their upkeep for 5 years. And that's not all. This morning, a government minister admitted that anyone we send to Rwanda who commits a crime can be returned to us. I'm beginning to see why the Home Secretary said the Rwanda scheme is something to do with bats, I think, wasn't it? What does he first think attracted Mr. Kagame to hundreds of millions of pounds for nothing in return?
Listen, I've slightly lost the thread of the question, Madam Deputy Speaker. But the simple point is, there's a simple question here. If you believe in stopping the boats, as we on this side of the House do, you need to have an effective deterrence and returns agreement. It's as simple as that. The honourable gentleman is not interested in stopping the boats, which is why he's not interested in the Rwanda plan. In fact, Madam Deputy Speaker, we know that they don't want to tackle this issue because even when this government was trying to deport foreign national offenders out of this country, they opposed it. Multiple members of his shadow front bench all signed a letter to me to that effect. But I don't need to tell him that because he signed it too.
Okay, that's enough. Sir Keir Starmer.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I would say that this treaty's got more holes in than a Swiss cheese, but I don't want to wind up the Prime Minister by talking about a European country again. Madam Deputy Speaker, you have to give credit to the Rwandan government. They saw this Prime Minister coming a mile off. You can only imagine their delight, their sheer disbelief, when having already banked £140 million of British taxpayer money without housing a single asylum seeker, the Prime Minister appears again with another offer they can't refuse. A gimmick that will send taxpayers' money to Rwanda, refugees from Rwanda to Britain, and won't stop the boats. It was mentioned of Margaret Thatcher earlier. Madam Deputy Speaker,
There's understandable excitement about the mention of the name. But the House must listen to the Leader of the Opposition, Sir Keir Starmer.
Party go from up yours to laws to take our money, Kagame.
Mr. Speaker. Madam Deputy Speaker, when it comes to this European thing and Margaret Thatcher, this is the week that the Shadow Foreign Secretary, I think, didn't rule out rejoining the European Union. He can role-play Margaret Thatcher all he wants, but when it comes to Europe, his answer's the same. Yes, yes, yes!
Madam Deputy Speaker, forget the private jet. He's obviously on a private planet of his own. But as Daily Mail readers learned this week that the Prime Minister has begun to feel sorry for himself. He's even been heard comparing his plight to his beloved Southampton Football Club. I do think that's a bit harsh, because Saints have been on an 11-game unbeaten run, while, as the song has it, the Prime Minister gets battered everywhere he goes. But if you want the perfect example of how badly the Tories have broken the asylum system, last week the Home Office admitted that 17,000 people in the asylum system...
Order! Order, come on. Sir Keir Starmer.
Thank you. If you want the perfect example of how badly they've broken the asylum system, Madam Deputy Speaker, last week the Home Office admitted that 17,000 people in the asylum system have disappeared. Their exact words, it's hard to believe this, we don't think we know where all these people are. Now, you might lose your car keys, you might lose your headphones, you might lose your marbles. How do you lose 17,000 people?
Prime Minister!
Well, Madam Deputy Speaker, I mean, on the topic of football teams, he used to describe this Rwanda policy as immoral, and yet his football team has a Visit Rwanda badge on the side of them. But in the week when he made his big economy speech, we're still waiting to hear how he's going to borrow £28 billion and still cut taxes and reduce debt. It's same old thing. The sums don't add up. But while they're struggling with their calculator, we're getting on and delivering. A new treaty with Rwanda, the toughest ever measures to cut legal migration, our schools marching up the tables, and tax cuts for millions, Madam Deputy Speaker. So whether it's controlling our borders or lowering our taxes, just like the Saints, the Conservatives are marching on.